Welcome in, everybody. It is Big Ten football and beyond on this Tuesday, high noon in the Central Time Zone. Great to be with you. I am Chris Landry. If you're new to the show, I forget to do this quite a bit. I assume it's everybody that knows who we are and been around who we are, and that's wrong of me. My name is Chris Landry. My background is as a veteran college and NFL coach and scout. Coached at LSU back in the day after playing days were over, and uh, was a recruiting coordinator. Worked in LSU administration as a football coach as well, and then on to the NFL, working on Belichick's staff with, among others, Nick Saban and many others. Working on his staff as a coach and then as a scout and as a personnel executive. Ran the NFL scouting combine. For a number of years, and then ran the Houston Oilers scouting department for years, and moved to Nashville, Tennessee when they became the Tennessee Titans, and still working in the NFL with as a consultant, own consulting business, Landry Football LLC, that breaks down and does work for college and NFL programs on coaching searches, coaching staff evaluations, evaluation of players. So everything from recruiting to the draft, breaking down players. That's what we do. That's what my background is in working with teams. We also started LandryFootball.com years ago to give a resource for fans that want to get a little bit more. They want to learn the whys. They want to understand the game more from a coaching and scouting viewpoint about their favorite teams, players, teams, coaches, schemes, and that's what we do for you. So we appreciate it. We have a number of podcasts. You can catch them all at LandryFootball.com. Become a member of LandryFootball.com, and you can not only listen to all the podcasts, but you can also get the inside the film room analysis. And you can do that with the very special football season sale that we have going on. It's less than $10 a month. It's less than that if you take advantage of the year membership. So we've got that for you. Help us out if you would. If you're listening to this, make sure that you sign up for Big Ten football and beyond. It's the only way we know that you like it, would like us to continue to do it. We're going to go strictly on the numbers. If you don't really like this show and you don't really like the content, you don't think there's a need to do a Big Ten show, then we won't do it. It's as simple as that. Same thing with the ACC show that we've got right after this, the Big 12 show, the Pac 12 show, the SEC show. So that's how we know whether you like it or want it. Sign up for Big Ten football and beyond. And sign up for the Landry Football Podcast channel as well, if you would help us do that. So now that we got that out of the way, and we want to welcome everybody that's joined us, we want to remind you that if you're listening to us in a podcast form, to join us live to do the show, and you can participate. Come right in the chat room. Very simple. You go to LandryFootball.com, hit follow Chris on Twitch, which is right at the top of the front page, and it'll take you to the Twitch channel. You can join us live. You can catch us on Twitter Live if you want to do that. If you want to catch us on the YouTube channel, Landry Football, you can do that. And you can listen to the show. And you can join us in the chat room. You can ask me questions, and we'll get to it in the mailbag segment. Depending, we might be able to integrate it to the early portion of the show. But that's another way to get involved. Can't answer your question if I don't know what it is. So join us. A lot to get to today. I want to talk about a number of things on the agenda. We've got, as we do, kind of go around the league and break down all the games. How does the film room grade rankings look this week? Give out some game balls. I'm going to talk certainly about the tough loss for Iowa, big loss for Purdue. Talk about this week's games towards the end of the show. And we're going to get into a little bit of the James Franklin, Mel Tucker talk. There is a lot of talk about those two gentlemen and where their futures may lay within the Big Ten or outside the Big Ten. We'll look at that, the pros and cons of that, and go with it. But certainly, we want to take a look at every aspect of the conference and the league. Some news and notes. Um, Maryland redshirt sophomore wide receiver Deshaun Jones out for the year with that leg injury. Um, we've got the big game coming up with Michigan State in a week. We're monitoring all the injury statuses there, and we'll have that all for you over at LandryFootball.com in our notebooks. Over at Illinois, Mike Epstein out for the year. Over at Minnesota, Cameron Wiley, the sophomore running back, has entered the transfer portal. We, of course, have had the injury bug hit Iowa's corner position, and so we've got the latest on that over in the college football notebook over at LandryFootball.com. We're gonna start there. In fact, I'm gonna actually start a little bit big picture, and we'll kind of go through just in general. Is we saw Iowa, and we've talked about with this Iowa team. It's a good team. I think people who study the Iowa program understand what the potential is and maybe don't appreciate the consistency of what they've done. And I compare a lot to what maybe Mark Stoops is doing at Kentucky. And ironically, the Stoops all have the Iowa ties. So there's a little bit of an irony there, but there's not the reason for the comparison other than the fact that if you look at how Kentucky runs their program and the success they've had, it's the consistency that's been impressive. No one has done it longer, consistency-wise, than Iowa and Kirk Ferentz. Yet there have been times where he's been criticized because he can't take it to the next level. I'm not sure there's a next level for Iowa. Truly not. I mean, I think one of these years with a team that as good as this year's team is, if you're an Iowa fan and you're hoping for greater expectations and, yeah, we're number 2, what can we do with it? What does it mean type thing? Well, I think you can have an expectation, but I think it needs to be realistic. What we talked about with this Iowa team is they're not very good on offense. We're going to get into the breakdown. The run game has not been as good. The passing attack has never been as good, never been very good at all this year. And so they're living off their defense and creating turnovers. I think I'm not a big, well, this would have happened here or there. You are what your record says you are. But the film clearly says that Penn State looked better and probably win that game. Purdue's been a tough matchup for Iowa, and we'll get into that. But there's a lot of what they do in the pass game. And you're down a couple of key contributors on defense in the back end. It makes a huge difference for Iowa. They don't replace them with the next 5-star. They develop players. So when the developed players go down, there's a big problem. And when you don't have an alternative way to win vis-a-vis the offense can carry in a game, you're going to have those issues, which is why, look, I don't care who you vote number 2 last week, this week, or whatever. It's about where people perceive you and where you're ranked, and then you just move up. That's not how I rank teams. I rank them on film, and Iowa was never a top 5 team for me. But I don't care if you rank them number 2. It's like I don't think Cincinnati's a top 5 team. But if you want to rank them number 2, I don't care. It's just kind of where they are. I think that the best team in the conference is still Ohio State. They've not looked the best week in and week out. They don't deserve bouquets of, boy, you've been consistently good each and every week playing to your standard. No, they haven't. They're still the best team. They still have the most talent. They just haven't played as consistent. I grant you that. They're getting better. But I think Ohio State's the best team. I think they're the only team in the Big Ten that could make the national playoffs. I think if fully healthy, Penn State's probably the next, along with Michigan and Michigan State, in that next cluster, along with Iowa. But I would put Iowa in that group, but below Penn State, as I mentioned. But I don't know what Penn State can do without a consistent running game and what they can do with their backup quarterback. I like what Michigan's done. I think they're getting great play out of their defense. There again, a little bit of an Iowa factor. I don't think they can score enough points to be anything more than, say, what Iowa is. I think Michigan State's got a little bit more balance. I think they're really good. I think they've got a great back. I think the quarterback's been very good. I think they've played good defense. I don't think they're quite as good defensively as a healthy Iowa or as Michigan or Penn State, but I think they probably got a little bit more balance. So I think you throw 2, 3, 4, and 5 and say, you can flip them around. They're different. And on a given day, a given week, that's how I see it. I don't see anybody beating Ohio State. I can certainly see a scenario where Ohio State can lose a game. They did it against Oregon, and it could happen again, although I think they're a better team. I try to focus on, and people will say, well, Chris, every game should matter in college football, and it does. You lose a game in week 2, you got to live up to that. You got to deal with the fact that you lost a game and you didn't play as well. That's on you. It does not, though, tell you how good the team will be all year long. It doesn't tell you that the team that was there in week 3 or 2 or whatever is the same team that's week 6 or 7 or 8. You never stay the same. You either get better or you get worse. So those things kind of jump out at me. Then I see a Minnesota, Purdue, Wisconsin, kind of a give or take different. That's how I see it in the film. I think Nebraska's inconsistencies. Maryland right now would be ranked lower because they are depleted with injuries and they're not real consistent. Northwestern is playing better, but Rutgers and Northwestern, Indiana and Illinois near the bottom. It's kind of where I see the league right now in terms of order in the film room. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be interesting to see who wins the West. I think Iowa can still run the table and have a good season. But I also think that there's this feeling of, oh, Iowa, they were frauds at number 2. I don't know. I think it's an ugly thing to say. Were Iowa the second best team in the country? Never, no how, not even close. But I also think it's kind of an ugly thing to say they're frauds. They are the least fraudulent team ever. If somebody chooses to put them at a number 2 ranking, that's on them. They're not diverse enough as a team to be good enough to be able to do anything other than consistently take care of business week in and week out. And it doesn't mean to go 11-0. There are limitations. If they weren't the limitations, then they could potentially be one of those top 5 teams. So it's kind of how I see it. I want to give some kudos to some players that I thought were outstanding this week. Speaking of Purdue and Iowa, David Bell was fantastic, as he always is. And a lot of what gives Iowa so much trouble is they work outside the numbers, those routes, so effectively that it widens up that split safety look of Iowa, and it creates some opportunities down the seam and certainly outside the numbers, and they can win. They can win more consistently against Iowa's defense in the passing game than most. Look, most teams don't throw it quite as well as Purdue, and so Iowa, who's very good at defending it, can force you into mistakes. Purdue's a little bit more sophisticated with the route concepts, and they stress out Iowa's defense a little bit more. And again, Iowa can't come back and win a game with their offense. That's not how they're built. But I thought he was outstanding. I thought on the defensive side, Cam Allen was outstanding. He had 2 picks, really good tackling, and had an impact in the game. Thought he was really good. I thought Matt Coughlin did a good job for Michigan State. Special teams player, get a nod for him. And a shout out to Braylon Allen, the running back at Wisconsin, that really ran the football well in a very, ho-hum win over Army for them. And I don't know that I'm seeing the type of improvement in this Wisconsin program this year to make a difference, but they are got a good young one there that I'm curious to develop. We've talked a little bit about the Iowa program and the consistency under Kurt, and I use the Kentucky analogy because then people will say things like, "Well, they can't leave well enough alone," is what I'm saying. They're good. They're good. They're a developmental program, and I use this Kentucky analogy because now you're going to start to see well, Kentucky's good, but boy, they sure couldn't get it done against Georgia. Of course not. We explained that. We talked about that on the SEC show, the national show. And they're not equipped for that. But they sure are playing better than a program like an LSU, a program like a Florida that has far better resources and talent. But Mark's consistently done it at Kentucky. To now then say, oh, that's good. You're doing the best of you, but when are you going to take it to the next level? There is no next level for Kentucky. There is no we're going to win the East. That's only going to happen if the programs in the East are struggling. Georgia collapses in a given year, Florida collapses in a given year, and the path is easy. You can happen. South Carolina got there once. It's not going to happen there on a regular basis. I don't want to say leave well enough alone, but leave well enough alone. There are ceilings with the programs. Speaking of that, there's a couple of things I want to address amongst coaches that are being discussed quite a bit in the media regarding potential moves to bigger time jobs. First is James Franklin. James, as you know, has been around a while, did a great job at Vanderbilt, deserves a lot of credit. I think that there's a little bit of a misnomer about how good it was. It's good. You win at Vanderbilt, it's good. It's not, but understand kind of some of the circumstances. It was maybe a little bit better than maybe people think. It was under different circumstances, different programs struggling, but he still did it. He's a salesman. He is great at selling a program. I think he's great at a place that has a program that needs to be sold. If you're at a place that doesn't have the support for football, but you need it to have it, then I think he's a really good fit there. I do not see him as this football coach that is a great coach. I do not see him as someone that is a difference maker in terms of coaching a program. He's not a great X's and O guy at all. Oh, he's got a great offensive line. No, he doesn't. Never has, never been good at that. It's not his thing. When he was at Maryland, it was Ralph Friedgen making those decisions, putting together the game plan. James is a recruiter and specifically a salesman. That's what he does. That's what he is. He also has been very successful through a lot of the Penn State fan base that maybe has been critical of him, has also used the leverage game to his advantage. He gets his name thrown into every job. The reason why the media has him is because his camp, his agent, puts his name out, floats his name out. His name gets thrown into jobs that he is not even a candidate for. It is to create an image of, because the media is easily fooled and fans are easily fooled about who's really good and who's really not. I think James has done a solid job at Penn State. I think recruiting there has been good, not great. I think coaching is very average. I don't think he's a great game day coach. He's not a guy that can fix things. He's a guy that has to hire well and has to delegate. He's a very well-spoken guy. Very well-spoken guy. He's much with a lot of polish. He can get on people's nerves, but again, he's very well-spoken in that regard. Now, in terms of a bigger job, I don't know that he wants to get a bigger job or he wants to get more love for the job that he's at. I think at Penn State, he is liked, respected by many. Others are not as comfortable with his performance. Not done a very good job in some people's eyes. I do think that he is someone that could do a good job in a number of places. Can he do an elite job? Is he a championship caliber coach? In my opinion, no. Well, what if he went to places with bigger resources? First of all, he loses games and he underperforms in games that, relative to his resources that he has, he can do an awful lot. He underachieves, even at Penn State. And I know that's hard for people to accept because how he overachieved at Vanderbilt. I get that. But over time, and when you do something at Vanderbilt, it's like turning water into wine. I get that. That's a miracle. But the reality is he's been pretty average to slightly above at Penn State. And I don't see him as good of a coaching candidate as other people do at places like USC or LSU. I think that the pressure would be greater at those places, and I think he'd melt under that pressure. I think he'd talk his way into having a little bit more time and more success. I think he could do that. I think he's a great talker. I think he can recruit better at USC and at LSU than he could at Penn State. Yes. But I don't think he could out recruit or out coach the elite coaches in the SEC. I think he'd have a better chance of success at USC because I think he'd recruit better, and I think you can win more just on personnel at USC. In the SEC, you better recruit well and you better coach well. Dan Mullen's an outstanding coach. He recruits well. He doesn't recruit great, and therefore he's fallen short to the expectations at Florida. James Franklin is not nearly as good a coach as some people think. I do think the fact that he is a popular guy and he does speak and he's in a very eloquent way. I think he's going to get some play, but I don't see that as necessarily. He likes to put that out there, and he never really focuses on it. And a lot of what's happened is, if you really knew how many jobs he's been offered, you'd be surprised, because there's this perception that he's turned down this and turned down that because his name is out there a bunch. I think football people see through him. Not all administrators do, but I just don't see that as being as good a fit as people think. That's my take on him. I would not be in favor, if I were USC or LSU, of that hire. It's great for him, and if that's what they want to do, hey, you don't need my blessing. I just don't think that's as good of a fit. Would he be better than the two coaches that they had? Yeah, it would be. The goal is not to get better than what you had, because what you had wasn't very good at all. The goal is to get the best guy that you can. And I don't think James Franklin is even close to being the best guy that USC or LSU can get. Mel Tucker, his name has been mentioned a bunch. Mel is, I think, a better coach than James Franklin. I think he's got a better idea conceptually of how to build a defense and how to build a team. I think he's a good recruiter. I think he has the whole toughness, not just the fake energy, but the whole organizational structure, the ability to be able to work with the coaches and coach the coaches a little bit better. I think he's a better coach than James Franklin, but he doesn't have as much experience. 1 year at Colorado, didn't do a bad job at all, did some good things. Gone to Michigan State. He hasn't been there very long. Be wary of jumping on a guy based upon how good he looks now. And you watch and see. If they lose a couple of games, if he loses to Harbaugh, if he ends up with 3 losses this year, then what is he not going to be good anymore? You can't be so simple-minded to base it off of a stretch of games, as a lot of folks do. You know, Jimbo Fisher's an idiot. He lost to Mississippi State. He's a genius now. That's stupid. That's people that don't know football that look at it in a very superfluous way. Mel Tucker's done a really good job. I think over time, you'd have a little bit more comfort level about what his true identity is and how successful he can be down the road. If he gets the opportunity to go to LSU, he's gone, and he should. I would tell him myself, knowing him, don't turn that down. Those opportunities only come along so often. But is he ready for that? Look, let me give you a little tip. It's a little bit easier to turn a program around than you think. You can take a program that's struggling and get them turned around pretty easily. You could do that. It's not as difficult as people think. It's not easy, but it's not as difficult as sustaining a program. Nothing is easy. Landry's not saying that it's easy to turn around a program. It is easier than sustaining it. I think you need to see more consistency in how he handles situations. I want to see not how he handles bad situations. I want to see how he handles bad situations. I want to see how he handles good situations, successes, and builds off of that. I think at a place like LSU, and there's a lot of that getting thrown out, that Mel's the top candidate at LSU. I can tell you for a fact he is not the top candidate at LSU. He's not in the top 3. However, he is a guy that if the handful of guys, I will go that far, the handful of guys that they would like, if they can't get, then I think Mel would enter that area of guys that have some qualities that they would like, and I think would be a good coach, may or may not be a fit. You're taking a gamble on a guy that hasn't done it long enough, but it very well may work out. I think there are a number of guys that fit into that category, and I think once they get into that B list, it's good. Why is his name out there? That name is being put out there for a reason. President William Tate, his group, his faction are purposely putting Mel Tucker's name out there as a strong candidate to see where this goes, to see what the public, there's going to be a lot of public backlash. You've got a first-time black president at LSU, and this would be the first time African-American head coach at LSU. There's, I think, wanting to get a sense of how people are going to be comfortable with that. Sad but true that we have to address that in this day and age. But I think there's a lot of that's being put out there because you're not going to scare Mel Tucker off from LSU if you float his name out there. If LSU works their way down their list and then it comes to Mel, they'll have their guy. They'll know pretty quick whether that's somebody that they want to pursue. It is somebody that will get an interview. Here's the thing that we do know. There is not a mandate, but a strong encouragement by the SEC and other conferences to make sure that they that they interview a certain amount of minority candidates. So I think that's a big factor. I fully expect Mel Tucker to get an interview. I don't know that he gets this job. It really depends upon who would back out of the job first that is higher on LSU's list. I think Mel will continue to do a good job at Michigan State. I don't know that if it will sustain to the level that even Mark D'Antonio did. I don't know. Or one of his proteges did. But Mel has a background at LSU. He's been hired by Nick Saban thrice. He's a good coach. As a head coach, I think he's off to a good start on how he wants to build a program. Ideally, you'd like to see him finish this season, which LSU is going to be able to do that, but you'd ideally like to see what he can do in subsequent years. They're not going to get that chance. They're going to have to make a decision on him now. And I think, again, they pretty much have made it on what they think about him, but I don't think he's the guy. I think there's 3 or 4 other guys that are the guy. And if that doesn't work out for whatever reason, then I think we can enter where Mel Tucker is. So not ruling him out. I'm just saying it's not the slam dunk that people think. That's going to take a little bit of time. Let's get into some of the games, and got any questions, we'll get to them. We'll run through the games pretty quickly. Purdue, Iowa, very impressed when looking at the tape. Purdue playing 3 quarterbacks on defense. Told you how good I don't think people realize how good Purdue's defense is. There's this perception of, they can throw it all around, but they don't play good defense. Really good. Really, really good. George Kalafidis couldn't be blocked the entire game, and I'm not sure I don't know that he was the best defensive player on Purdue's team. That's how good. That's how good they were. That's how well they played. Cam Allen played great. Karlaftis could be player of the week of the Big Ten. He played that well. From an Iowa standpoint, they couldn't defend David Bell. I thought Hankins struggled. I know he was injured. That just made the matters worse. Terry Roberts started in place of Moss, had his moments, but you can see it weren't as good. Again, big drop-off. Purdue was 9-13 on third downs. Okay, that's the entire game, the consistency. I know, talking with a lot of our friends, that Iowa's given up plays on third downs in early parts of the game, but that's for stretches in the early parts of the game. Purdue had success and had plenty of opportunities. Big-time conversions the entire game. The offensive line at Iowa is not as good as people think. I hear people say that Iowa's offensive line is as good in the game. They're not even close. They're not. They haven't played nearly as well as they normally do. Purdue ate them up front. Lindenbaum is a great player, but they've got youth on that offensive line, and they've not played that well. They've not been consistent. It is a young group. They will be good. They are well coached. They always have been. This is not that good of an offensive line this year. The running game, as a result, hasn't been very good. The passing game, pass protection, it is a problem that shows up on tape with the quarterback play and the receiver play. The overall passing game's not all that good. So just not getting enough out of the passing game, not getting enough out of the running game. Pass defense, again, through injuries and playing a Purdue team, not as good as it has been, and it's killing them long term. Look, I think this Iowa team is going to still have a good year, but it is not anything special. Let's take Michigan State beat Indiana. Let's take a look at this Michigan State team kind of through the midway point of the year. The thing that jumps out at me Number of things that jump out at me about this Michigan State team. Quarterback play with Thorne is very impressive. The redshirt sophomore has been outstanding. Um, Decision making has been very good. We're not talking about somebody that throws caution to the wind, makes foolish decisions. What I like about Mel's team, what I like about the offense, that is the fact that they are being very, very consistent in the quarterback position with the passing game. Now, again, over time, would that be consistent in future years? The biggest reason is Kenneth Walker. The Wake Forest transfer is literally one of the best running backs in the country. You put him up against anybody in the country. His vision, his speed, his agility, his strength, his balance, his toughness, it's all there. It's all there. They have had good running backs at Michigan State over the past 15, 18, 20 years. This guy is the best of them all. He has the skill set that the others did not have at a different level. He's unbelievable. He is their offense, and he makes everything around them go. He makes the line play better. He makes the receivers get open better. He dictates fronts and coverages because of his play. So let's understand that they're not out scheming people. They are being smart and playing to their strength. I think the receiver play is talented. Reed and Naylor are big play threats. And, moving Reed outside and playing him outside Naylor was really smart decision. And then the number 3 receiver, Trey Mosley, is really having a good year, making big plays. I think Courtney Hawkins has done a great job with this group. Their top 3 receivers have handled the bulk of the snaps. They've done a good job. They've been pretty average at tight end, quite frankly. The offensive line is not a strength. It's not a weakness. It's been solid, nothing special. And again, great back, great receivers. They've taken over. The defensive line is very, very good. I hear that. I've heard people talk about that Antonio left the program in bad shape. It did not. They got a lot of NFL talent on that defense. Slade and Barrow are really good players. Hunt and Hanson and Mallory, they're really, really good. They've got good defensive ends in rotation. They are good, and they are talented, and they play hard. They play well. I think Halliday and Crouch have played very, very well at linebacker. I don't think the secondary is as good as they have been. I think the safeties are really good. I don't think they're as good at corner. They play around that well. This is a really, really good team. But they're really talented, too. They're really talented, and they're well coached. The offense at Indiana is a problem. It's a big problem. And this is another example, though, and I'm not making the comparison. But last year at this time, if you were talking about hot coaches that should absolutely get one of these great jobs, Tom Allen would be the guy. Now is he the village idiot? Just not as hot now. Keep that in mind. You want guys with a little bit more pedigree, a little bit more consistency. We've seen enough of Minnesota and Nebraska to know what they are under their current coaches. Minnesota, I think, plays tough. They play physical for the most part. They play well for the most part. They run the football well. They have they play hard on defense. They know how to run the football. The defense is physical. The defensive lines play well. They play the run well. I think they've gotten consistent, if not great quarterback play. They've got consistent quarterback play, and they develop well. I think this is a team that's pretty well coached. There's a lot of Harry High School, feeling elite and all that kind of stuff. PJ hasn't recruited at an elite level, but they've developed pretty well. Nebraska, um, it's the same issue and problems of they have mental errors and mistakes and sloppiness that prevents their chances to win games. They make enough plays in most games to be good enough to win, but they are not consistent enough, and they certainly the one consistent thing they do is make mental errors. They didn't run the football well against Minnesota. Their passing game wasn't very good. They're not getting enough there. They get receivers that make a lot of mistakes in their route running. The quarterback plays up and down. Tough quarterback that's gone through a lot. He can run the football, but there's nothing, and this is supposed to be Scott's strength. If there's anything that I see that's better is the defense. I thought the defense played well for 3 quarters. They can't hold up for 4 quarters consistently against good teams. Look, they're losing games that at this point they should be winning. And my God, again, the special teams are a disaster. It's rinse and repeat with them. Northwestern's playing a little bit better. The defense snapped back. Again, not a good Northwestern team, but consistent how they coach, consistently getting better. That's what we're seeing. I thought the pass rush has gotten better. Nice win over Rutgers, which is taking a step back, and still is a long way to go, and they've got to get the program in better position. Wisconsin wasn't all that impressive, but they contained the triple option pretty well, and then Army had some success. It's kind of more of the same. It's just not the same team with this game. This week, Illinois at Penn State, as Penn State will have obviously the time off and the Illinois game to figure out what they can do with their offense, what they can do with their quarterback situation. Ohio State will continue to roll against Indiana. Iowa's got a bye. Maryland, Minnesota. Minnesota's in position now with Maryland's injuries to take care of business. I think Michigan will be challenged a little bit by Northwestern, not a lot. I think Michigan takes care of business, set up the 7-0 matchup against Michigan State, who the Spartans have a bye. Nebraska has a bye. Rutgers has a bye. And Wisconsin-Purdue is a matchup that I'm curious to see if Wisconsin can get a little bit more done. Don't get behind in this game, or this is a game, again, that Wisconsin can easily lose. Handed out the game balls. That's kind of how I see it this week in the Big Ten for all the latest breakdowns, the in-depth, detailed film room breakdowns of what looked inside the film room, as well as the film room breakdowns of the upcoming games this week. Go over to LandryFootball.com. Get all the details, the news and notes, who's healthy, who's available, who's not, all the grades. We got it all for you at LandryFootball.com. Take advantage of the football season sale there. We're going to take a break. A little after the top of the hour, we're going to talk a little ACC football. Jake gets under the – Jake, get in a little bit sooner. Appreciate you. Does Wisconsin defense match up better against Purdue's passing attack than Iowa? Yes, because Iowa's defense is injured. Okay, Wisconsin will play the pass better because they're healthier, and they do play a base nickel. You're correct. But that two-deep scheme works a lot better for Iowa if you got 2 healthy corners. They were down a healthy corner, and they were down 2 healthy corners. One that didn't play in the game, one that got injured in the game. So that's the biggest issue more than the scheme. But they do, because a lot of what Wisconsin will mix things up in their nickel look. They'll drop a lot of backers, but you still got to defend the run game pretty well. So, yeah, I do think that Wisconsin can defend it well. The problem is if you give up some points, that Wisconsin's going to be in the same issue that Iowa was in not being able to score enough points. So that's going to be a challenging game for them. Good question there, Jake. Appreciate you joining us. So check us out top of the hour, a little bit after the top of the hour for ACC football and beyond. we're going to get some pro football talk as well today, right here at 4 p.m. Central Time. So check us out today. Appreciate you joining us. Sign up for Big Ten football and beyond. I'll talk to you in a little bit.